Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian. If you happen to be new around here, in today's video I wanted to talk about something that's been on my heart and on my mind for at least the last month, ever since Amazon quit the game, ever since AGS was like, we're done with New World, we're done with MMORPGs, basically we're done with gaming. But there's just been this pervasive thought about the state of what it means to be an MMORPG and how the future of the MMORPG is no longer massive. And we're seeing a massive shift in what players, especially people like myself as a parent, father of 6, like MMORPGs have become something that I longed for, but have found that life events have taken me away from being able to actively be a participant and, in a way, a supporter of those style of games. Now, I'm still playing Final Fantasy XI in this case. That is where my subscription is going to every month, funding that game, hoping and praying that Square Enix will one day really bring this into the forefront. And there's really good news on that front, and perhaps I should make a dedicated video about that here in the near future. But this video is focusing in on where MMOs are going and what has really changed, because I think we all kind of get it, especially why, with the increasing costs of everything, with groceries and pricing and just the affordability crisis hitting, I think, each and every one of us. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that game companies want to lean more into nostalgia rather than invest massive dollars into what could potentially be the next big thing, only to find that the death spiral does come for you regardless. Hype and the crash, can you survive it? And if Amazon can't survive it, we've already seen massive pullbacks of funding for other MMOs, which have announced that they are either shopping around for new funding or canceling. Now, before we dive fully into the video itself, I know there's going to be several of you in the comments, rightfully so, I actually agree with you, talking about like Ashes of Creation, Star Citizen, even maybe Riot's upcoming MMORPG. There's always going to be hope, and honestly, I think I want all 3 of those games listed to be amazing and to really bring me back in and say, yes, this revitalizes my love of being in these online persistent universes that really do big things. However, at least, of course, in the next short term, we have no release dates on any of those. In fact, we haven't seen anything from Riot other than they were going back into development hell to kind of get that going. So that's going to be something we're going to put a pin in. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future video. I know there's not a lot of positive thoughts I've seen from Ashes of Creation. We'll talk about that perhaps in another video. And Star Citizen, I'm also very hopeful, but you can kind of see you have to be crazy if you want to release something that would, how when we say MMO, what do we think of, right? That massive multiplayer online. Yeah, so you got Star Citizen, Ashes of Creation. Yeah, that's the crazy pile. We're rooting for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the industry is following suit. And this is also to say that there isn't like bad news for existing MMORPGs. I think what we've seen right now is kind of a reverse exodus from Final Fantasy XIV back into World of Warcraft, or I've seen a lot of players that I've followed for a long time, Final Fantasy XIV players, stepping into World of Warcraft for the first time. And those two games kind of share, you know, obviously some similarities. Yoshi P of Final Fantasy XIV fame has stated that they are following the World of Warcraft model. And honestly, with the reception of Dawntrail, you can see that I think he's following it really closely to what we saw with the ebb and flow within World of Warcraft. Now, what we see here is Sabrina's actually tweeting this out, talking about the player base. Latest numbers are coming in on this game in and of itself, and the numbers seem to have returned to Stormblood level numbers, which is to say that the game isn't necessarily in its most healthy state. This isn't to say that it can't recover. 8.0 will bring a lot of hope for a lot of players, but we'll have to wait and see what ultimately shakes out when that happens. Now, I think there are several contributing factors to the shift in MMO, going from massive to mini, and mini is a specific word that we've seen actually used by multiple developers. You look at No Rest for the Wicked, they call themselves a mini MMORPG. That's to highlight the uniqueness of what I think players are craving, which is to have a multiplayer experience, kind of in a way, if you think Helldivers 2 where you feel like you're a part of a bigger world, but the gameplay and the nuance is more tailored. I just sat down and played Where Winds Meet, for example, and if you haven't played that, a lot of people were messaging me on that, and I streamed that over on Ginger Loves MMOs. And as just a heads up, I'm thinking about repurposing that channel to Ginger Prime Live or something like that, because the fact of, as you know, a parent, as you probably just saw with my daughter coming in and asking me to open up a cheese stick for her, the availability to spend the time in MMORPGs has drastically declined for me. I'm sure that will come back at some point, but it doesn't seem natural to you know, have two channels covering, you know, similar kind of games that I'm interested in. But like I said, I streamed Where Winds Meet, and that also has that mini MMO feel. Like, you have that ability to pull in players, but you could also have that solo style experience. And this opens up the gameplay options to what players I think have been craving, whether it's action combat or something else. You could end up investing more into that gameplay that makes it fun and rewarding, and that replayability, where MMOs that come out, you know, like you look at Final Fantasy 14 and WoW, tend to really follow a similar theme. In Final Fantasy 14, obviously investing heavily into the story. A couple other games to kind of mention in this category, you could think Enshrouded. You could also think Light No Fire from what we've seen. Now we're still all waiting and hoping, and you know, for more information on Light No Fire, and I'll be sure to cover that here for you guys here, as well as my continued coverage of No Rest of the Wicked. But we'll be bringing back some more MMO coverage here. And if 8.0 for Final Fantasy 14 really like invests in like the jobs and, you know, the systems there, the combat, I'd be willing to go through and update all the controller guides, but it'd have to be a significant amount where the existing controller guides still cover that base. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on what my plans are there. I do want to highlight one thing, is that I don't think MMOs, what it exists in our mind, have any real unique kind of appeal like they once did. Coming in early into the online world, offering chat rooms with so much to explore, it opened up this virtual world, this metaverse, which we saw a lot of companies try to shift to and brand to, but those have all been established. Minecraft is the perfect example of this. Same thing with Fortnite, where these games just persist and they bring in players young and old, especially young, and that's also a key feature. I have no ability, outside of maybe being willing to test the Final Fantasy 14 mobile version, to want to put my kids into that game. That's for many reasons, the subscription being one of them, the culture war and the community, the cult surrounding it being another. The game has definitely hit this weird spot in online discourse that it just breaks your heart, because you can't really have deep conversations without people wanting to threaten violence against you at an upcoming fan fest, for example. Absolutely atrocious, but here we are. But that leads exactly into one of the core issues. The unique feature has shifted into social media. You get your PvP, you get your PvE, you get your clout, you get that communication, you get that constant feed, that dopamine hit that comes so easily because you have a phone and you can easily doom scroll as much as you want, where it takes for an MMO. Maybe you have to update, maybe you have to subscribe. Like, there are just so many barriers that generally at the end of the day, most people, the people who generally used to support these games financially, like myself, gamers that have a life, have a family, will just find easier ways. And that really sings to the things that I've been playing. I mentioned a handful of games, but that doesn't account the single player games that I'm enjoying. Dragon Quest 1, for example, I've almost beat that. Final Fantasy Tactics as well. Absolute incredible masterpiece. My favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. And that was even back on the PlayStation, still is. And the voice acting makes it even better. I really enjoy what they've done with their remake on that game. But those are single player games. That's where these companies are shifting. We've seen like a complete financial shift away from trying to attract more gamers. The costs have gotten so absurd that they are now leaning more and more into nostalgia, because gamers like myself who might have some expendable income are more than willing to spend that. I can easily go and pick up Dragon Quest 1 and 2, play it with me and my kids, let them check it out, and there's no recurring cost. In fact, it's easy to do that because it's also playable on all my devices, where something like Final Fantasy 11 and 14, for example, have that required subscription. making it hard. Now I could obviously try to lean into the free trial, but that's where the mobile edition and free to play for the genre, unfortunately, and it makes my stomach hurt saying it, feel like that's what's going to become kind of the de facto. Personally, I would be like okay with it if it's buy to play, something like Guild Wars 2, for example, which, speaking of Guild Wars 1 coming back, controller support. I believe that's actually happening today. I tried to go download and pay for it, but I couldn't, so we'll see. I'll have to go double check after I'm done finishing this video. That's exciting to me because I never got to play Guild Wars 1. And I think, and I've said this multiple times, if Guild Wars 2 had controller support, it would be perhaps my favorite MMORPG because it delivers on what I feel like the open world should. And that's the other problem we've seen, especially in Final Fantasy XIV's case, them move the MMO content, the thing that you would feel like makes it feel massive, off into these own little pockets. Think Eureka or Boscia, or I don't even know what the name of the new thing is for the new expansion is now, but that is kind of where it's like, yeah, we're gonna have it, but we're gonna regulate it over here, which feels weird because if they were trying to attract players who wanted that, well, you then ask them to play through something that they don't want to ultimately get to that. Seems a little bit odd, but it is a choice that obviously was made. Hopes for 8.0, hopes for the future for sure. I never want to sit here and people come in and just kind of leave the game feeling bummed, but I actually have a lot of hope for it. I think the mini MMO, or I mean, you could technically still call it MMO. You would just mean mini multiplayer online RPG. Absolutely confusing to many. So we'll have to maybe see if there is a better name. I don't know if I like the MMO light kind of mindset, but you can let me know. That's been used in the past, of course. But I think that is something exciting. Like No Rest for the Wicked, I cannot recommend that game enough. Now I can't share certain things just yet, but soon we'll be talking more about how that's going to feel like a mini MMO or a mini MO. We'll figure it out. And all that being said is like those games that make it easy for you to get in and play with your friends is going to be how it is, because I don't see a world in which that a lot of people, there are those, you might be one of them, who go into these games looking for community. You find that community and then you get into the game. It's kind of completely shifted roles. If you think of Twitch, if you think of like just even the big streamers, call out Asmongold for an example, clearly he has a huge draw. People will see what he's playing and then they might go and play that. So the community aspect has been reversed to where what are people playing and talking about, and then you go check it out. You then have aspects of Discord and social media that help you to find a group if you don't have one, or you just end up teaming up with your friends and playing the game naturally in that regards. But all that being said is that the mini aspect, the ability for them to create really fun content where you don't have to worry about adjusting for 5,000 players doing a thing, and thus it's constantly refreshing and it doesn't feel like you have any real impact, to something that does feel like you have an impact, where you do have control. And there is a little bit of chaos because multiplayer always brings that in. But if you don't want that multiplayer experience, you really want that solo experience, well, then that is still open to you. I think, again, No Rest for the Wicked is a massive highlight of that fact. But that brings us to the end of the thoughts that I've been having pretty much for the last month. Hopefully I'll get into kind of a better habit of making more videos and content for you guys. And I do thank you so much if you enjoy, and I really hope you enjoyed the video itself. If you feel like it did and you feel like it earns it, that like button, and you don't have to use it here, but if you have the hype button, I think it's only on mobile, you get 3 hypes a week. So whether you use it here, be sure to use them on creators that you want to support. You might not like my approach, who I am in general, and the algorithm just fed it. Well, don't hype this, but here's just a reminder: find the people that you love and that you want to support their content, and be sure to use those every week. Now, as we do here at the channel, we're going to now pivot to what we call the message of hope. For those of you who don't know, especially this is kind of like a virtual men's group. Hello, ladies. I'm so glad you're here. But one of the things that I feel very passionate about is especially how we look at society and how we've seen just the decline of mental health in men being a real impact. Now, I'm always going to encourage you, let this just be a taste. Get plugged in the real world with any other dudes that you can sit around and you can, at least if nothing else, get the gunk in your mind, the cobwebs, the dust, the darkness, the voices that tell you that you can't, the voices that tell you that you're not good enough, the voices that tell you it's too late. Those are all lies. Like all that is just BS, but that's just how our brain works. And it can feel very isolating. So it's very important that you actually offset the lies with truth. And that's getting plugged in, whether it's with friends, whether it's just at a local church or something like that. There are plenty of opportunities out there. And if you need help, you can always use this and our Discord server as a stepping stone. But I'm going to continue to encourage that real world connection. Today, I want to talk to you about something that's been going on in my world. Note that it feels like October, November, now in December, like we've just been getting hit left and right. Lots of different things. Son broke his arm, thankfully got his cast off, fully healed. You got to love a 5, now a 6-year-old, their recovery. But that is terrifying. And we also have other medical issues. I had some kids that are going to have eye surgery probably this time in February. So here in 2 months time to fix it, just like these just random issues. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the scariest thing. But we are experiencing some issues with my oldest son, who's having like what's called absent seizures. Doesn't seem to be dangerous. It's more informative, but it just feels sometimes when you're like, you know what, I could use a breather. I could use a break. And that's where gaming can be that escape. And I always want to encourage a good, healthy balance with gaming because it can be that escape, but I think it also has the risk of us abusing that enjoyment. And I think that's what I've seen hands down with several of you guys who've reached out, and thank you. And note that I'm praying for you. And it's really important to keep having these conversations. Who've messaged me talking about that it feels too late for them, that they feel completely alone, that they were thinking about killing themselves and then they're not. And I just want to encourage you, especially if you're in that place and this video was fed to you for some reason and you're using gaming or content, it's just looking for some bit of hope. Note that it's there for you. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily be easy, but I always like to recommend this. And if you watch any videos, like you could almost comment below. You can almost like cite it off, like make your bed, take a shower, and brush your teeth. 3 things that are going to give you some quick wins, going to make you feel better. And you're going to find that sometimes doing some physical things for yourself help with your mental health. Now, especially if you're having these dark thoughts, weakness is not talking to a therapist. Like, you are not weak for needing to reach out. I use therapy, cognitive behavior therapy. That is something that is very valuable, and I've really enjoyed it. So highly encourage you guys to seek out help, but also, again, just to remind you that your friends, your family would rather hear your story than attend your funeral. And as we get into December, note that the things that you might be feeling, because I get seasonal depression. That's something that I know I feel very heavily, starting this time around. And I offset that for me with vitamin D, just as a supplement to help make sure that your body, your physical body, isn't necessarily causing your mind to run against you. Now, there could be other issues, and that's why I don't want to just say, just take vitamin D, you're fine. Not saying that whatsoever. Encouraging you to fight for yourself. Sometimes that means you have to go on a journey. I've shared my journey many times. We'll continue to share it here with you guys. Sometimes it does mean that you have to go and keep fighting for yourself and keep asking questions. And generally, I would like to always point to physical and food, because what I've found, at least in my life and from my experience, is that allergies that you didn't know you had were having an effect on your body. Meaning, like, it turns out, like, as much as I like spinach and you're like, oh, spinach is healthy, it'd make my body feel sick, and it would actually make me want to turn to things like sugar or alcohol or things like that to try and just like, what is wrong with me? Why am, etc. And I want to encourage you guys that sometimes you got to get radical, and there are answers for you. You might have to go on a little bit of a journey, but never give up hope, because you can keep fighting for yourself. And at some point, the reason why you might have had to suffer the way that you've had to suffer is because somebody else will have that same experience, and you can be a mentor towards them. And that's apparently, that's I think one of the key aspects that as men we want to do. We want to encourage each other. We want to razz on each other. We want to push you to be who you were made to be. And hopefully this is a stepping stone for you, especially if you're out there getting into the holiday season feeling like all is lost. It's not. And sometimes you got to turn off the voices, and whether that's social media, whether that's even me, you feeling kind of, I'm not trying to bum you out with the future of the MMOs, but it is what it is. That is something I think you will hopefully get a lot out of. Thanks everybody for spending time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed Hope you got something good out of this message. I hope. If you did, or if you feel like you know somebody who could, feel free to share it. You can even clip it. You don't have to credit me. I don't care. Like, it's not about me. I want you guys to have a healthy and wonderful holiday season as we get through the winter together and on to 2026, baby. Anyway, thank you so much. God bless, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Game time, baby, hit sub, hit like. Boost that hype, let the numbers spike. From Mario jumps to that MMO grind. We up all night, but we still stay kind. Name's Brian, 6 kids, yeah, the party at 8. Tryna log in late night, but the queues gotta wait. I'm a Final Fantasy hero in a minivan lane. Limit breaks on the budget, still I'm grinding through